A 200-ton cargo plane is not designed to fly upside down. If it rolls past 60 degrees, the wing should rip off. But on April 7, 1994, a bleeding pilot forced a McDonnell Douglas DC-10 into a supersonic dive and a barrel roll. He wasn't trying to crash the plane. He was breaking the laws of physics to stop the man trying to murder him in the cockpit. This is the impossible survival of FedEx Flight 705. Meet Auburn Calloway, a brilliant flight engineer and martial arts expert. But beneath his calm uniform, his life was collapsing. Facing termination for fraud, his mind engineered a terrifyingly precise exit strategy: a staged plane crash. If he died on duty, his family would receive a $2.5 million life insurance payout. But to make it look like a mechanical failure, he couldn't use a gun. He needed blunt force. Why a hammer? Calloway's plan was a masterpiece of cold, calculating insurance fraud. If he used a gun, investigators would find bullets. A hammer could be blamed on cargo turbulence. The crew: Sanders, Tucker, and Peterson, 3 highly trained veterans. They thought Calloway was just catching a ride. They didn't know they were locked in an aluminum tube with an apex predator. "20 minutes into the flight, cruising altitude, then the sound of skull fracturing. Calloway struck without warning. Peterson's temporal artery was severed instantly. Blood flooded the instrument panels. The cognitive overload was absolute. In seconds, 3 men were bleeding out from catastrophic head trauma. Logic dictates they should have died right there. But Calloway miscalculated human willpower. While Sanders and Peterson dragged themselves into a brutal hand-to-hand fight with the hijacker, co-pilot Jim Tucker realized his only weapon was the airplane itself. Tucker, an ex-Navy pilot, pulled the yoke entirely to his chest. The massive DC-10 pitched up 15 degrees. The G-forces pinned Calloway to the floor. The aerodynamic stress alarm screamed. To keep the attacker off balance, Tucker threw the cargo plane into a 140-degree barrel roll. The structural load limits were shattering. If he pulled too hard, the tail would snap. Think about the engineering. 380,000 pounds of metal, fuel, and cargo, defying gravity. The hydraulic lines were pushed past their absolute threshold. The wings groaned, begging for mercy. The DC-10 relies on 3 redundant hydraulic systems to control its massive flight surfaces. But inside the cockpit, a different system was failing. Jim Tucker's brain was swelling. A fractured skull causes intracranial bleeding. The blood presses against the motor cortex. At 18,000 feet, Tucker lost complete control of the right side of his body. He was flying a 200-ton jet with one hand. In the back, it wasn't a fight. It was a slaughterhouse. Blinded by their own blood, with fractured skulls, Sanders and Peterson fought a martial artist. The fight escalated. Calloway retrieved his backup weapon, a spear gun. In a space no bigger than a closet, it was a weapon of absolute slaughter. Peterson didn't flinch. Driven by the primal instinct to survive, he grabbed the spear with his bare hands. The pain was irrelevant. If Calloway fired, they all died. Tucker's right arm was paralyzed. He was losing consciousness. He threw the plane into a vertical dive. Speed reached Mach 0.88, the fastest ADC-10 had ever flown. The sound barrier began to compress. Down on the ground, Memphis Air Traffic Control watched in horror. Flight 705 wasn't just squawking an emergency code, it was flying erratically, like a wounded animal in the sky. The crew had to disable their attacker permanently. Sanders, nearly blind from his own blood, used Calloway's hammer against him. It was no longer a protocol, it was raw, primitive survival. The dive worked. Calloway was subdued. They neutralized the threat. But physics is unforgiving. They were 35,000 pounds over the maximum landing weight. The plane was a flying fuel bomb. Sanders took the yoke. Tucker, having bought them time with impossible maneuvers, finally collapsed. Now, Sanders had to land a heavy, bleeding machine without full vision. The moment the tires touched the concrete, the brakes ignited. The sheer kinetic energy of a fully fueled DC-10 landing at 200 miles per hour threatened to collapse the landing gear. Reverse thrust screaming, brakes melting. Sanders held the center line. In the back, Calloway lay in handcuffs, his flawless mathematical plan destroyed by 3 stubborn men. The plane stopped. The alarms faded. In the deafening silence that followed, there were no cheers, just the ragged breathing of men who had fought death and won. Auburn Calloway was sentenced to life in prison. The crew survived, but the catastrophic brain injuries grounded them for life. They never flew a commercial jet again. Flight 705 remains the ultimate study in human endurance. Computers and physics said they should have crashed. But a computer doesn't know how hard a man will fight for his life. Subscribe if you want to see what else humanity is capable of